fact that Scott Service was allowed to be manager for so long was what held this team back. And I actually do believe if they brought in Dan Wilson even like a week earlier, maybe we would still be talking about at least a meaningful final weekend of the Oakland A's series. So that's my bad right there. Just doing that really quickly. And Steve, what's your bad part of the Mariners?
Well, let's go all the way back to opening day, because I think that's where we should start with it. Where the they had a plan in spring training, and that involved outfield rotation with Luke Raley, and Mitch Haniger hits an opening day home run, and they abandoned the plan that they had set in place, and then all of a sudden Mitch Haniger now is starting every single day, and this team did not get off to the best starts in the world. And one of the things that you and I were saying at the beginning of the season was that it's imperative for this team to start off red hot. Like, they needed to hit the ground running. We heard time and time again that this team was going to be more of a contact station to station type team. You were going to see a lot of movement on the base path. And for the first 2 months of the season, we didn't see that at all. We saw a lot of ineptitude from both of the Mitches. And there was that point in May where this team was being carried by Dylan Moore. You know what I mean? It was carried by Josh Rojas for a 3-week stretch while the rest of the lineup just could not get out of its own way. And yet, amazingly, this team banked a 10-game lead in the division. But it was, for me, the biggest failure of the season was not keeping the lineup flexible, right? So, when Mitch Haniger hits the opening day home run, all of a sudden he starts for the next 30 days. And we don't see Luke Raley until May.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. You know what I mean? Luke Raley didn't even crack anything. And then.
Correct. And what's interesting about it is when Raley finally got into his season, and then all of a sudden, he's still trying to shoehorn Mitch Haniger into the lineup. When it was evident that keeping him in the lineup was actually hurting this team. And I understand finances play into it, but it was the what's the word I'm looking for? It was the arrogance of Scott Service to continue running out lineups that were, had trouble scoring 2 runs, the ability not to trust young players, or the ability to call up young players until it was evident that they needed to, right? Like, we didn't see Ryan Bliss until June. And then, Bliss gets a couple weeks of run, and then Polanco comes back, and then all of a sudden Bliss is back in Tacoma. And it's like, they bring up they brought up Ty Locklear, who actually had a very short, a brief short stint, but he was actually hitting the ball well when Ty France was out. And, and that's it. Ty France comes back, and, he does what Ty France did. And it was, sometimes you have to make tough decisions. And Scott Service did not do that, and it cost us. But also, I would have liked to see Ty France under Dan Wilson. You saw what happened when he left Seattle and he goes to Cincinnati, and Ty France reverts back to 2021 Ty France. And it lets you know how flawed Scott Service and his approach to hitting was. But to me, that was the bad. It was the neglect of putting the team in front of your own ego, and that's what we saw until Scott Service was ultimately fired. The bad was trusting Scott Service's trusting Jerry DiPoto's ability to put a competent team on the field, a cohesive team that was going to play together, and we didn't see that all year. At all.
Not at all. And it's just crazy to think that we've already gotten reports that Jerry DiPoto is going to go into 2025. And I don't have to repeat myself, or we don't have to repeat ourselves, but until we see Jerry DiPoto fired, and Justin Hollander, he's got to go with him too, because I don't trust a thing of him either. We're going to see pretty much the same exact thing, which we'll talk about after we get through the goods. Now the goods, at least, yes, this is kind of a negative-based show, but we got to put at least they didn't lose 100 games. So at least if they didn't lose 100 games, there was a good reason for that. So I'll get started with the good. The goods I'm going to say are Bryce Miller and Brian Wu. Like, they exceeded my expectations exponentially. Like, I wasn't even expecting Brian Wu to even be healthy. Bryce Miller, yeah, he pitched a lot of fastballs like we saw it, but he did mix it up once in a while, which really did work out well. And they did take huge steps forward. Like, none of us would have really expected that. We were thinking that, oh, it's nice that we just have him as a 4 and 5 guy. But now they're looking like they could be like maybe like 2s and 3s kind of guy, which the positive part of those two guys having great performances, and granted, if Brian Wu is healthy going into next season, I would wonder if Luis Castillo could be traded, because we did hear about the fact that Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, and Cal Raleigh are entering into arbitration years, which means they're going to be a bit more expensive. So that has me thinking that maybe the Mariners, they do have the depth enough where they can say, okay, we don't need Luis Castillo anymore, so they can unload his huge contract. So we'll have to see on that. And that's something I hope they do. And hopefully they can use the momentums of Brian Wu and Bryce Miller to trade Luis Castillo to get any kind of bat. And I don't want just prospects. No more prospects out of these players. Like, it's got to be like someone who can provide impact immediately, because with the window the Mariners have, there's just realistically no time left. Like, we've got guys entering into arbitration years. We've already had Cal Raleigh criticize the ownership, and who knows how much more are they going to slash the payroll. So if we compare to the 90s, so if it was 95 to 22, we're pretty much like at 97 to 98 kind of years. So that's where the window is severely closing, and it's closing faster than we would all like to think. So, but other than that, Brian Wu and Bryce Miller are the positives that I would go for the season. I would say Dan Wilson, but I already talked crap about Scott Service, so it wasn't really necessary to say anything about Dan Wilson, although I thought he couldn't have done worse than Scott. But your turn on what was the goods.
I'm going to start off with Julio Rodriguez being able to rebound. Now, granted, he was out for a couple stretches this year. And when he played for a good 3/4 of the season, he was very, very bad. But he still managed to put up a 2020 season in the midst of one of his worst years as a professional. He still finished with a 274 average, 326 OBP, slug 413, OPS 739, and he had an OPS plus of 117. And that was nice. That was nice for me to see that he was able to rebound. And again, in the midst of a year where you had a lot of transition with the coaching, you had mixed messages. Julio Rodriguez was bringing in his personal swing coaches and all that. To be able to finish strong was nice to see. That will bring momentum into next season. Now, whether or not he has the ability to carry over, we're going to find out in 2025. But I was actually mighty impressed with Julio Rodriguez, his ability to finish strong. The other thing I want to point out to, I want to give some flowers to both Bryce Miller and Logan Gilbert. I'll just say this: we know how much the Mariners covet club control. I like, seriously, I think he goes to bed and prays to the baseball gods every single night, and Jerry Boto's on his knees praying, like, come on, please, baseball gods, more club control. Please, more club control. Here's the deal. Even in arbitration, both Logan Gilbert and George Kirby are going to be cheaper than anything they can find on the open market. And as we know that Luis Castillo, I think Luis Castillo he hasn't lived up to the extension that the Mariners gave him. He's like nowhere near second half 2022 Luis Castillo when he got over here. Sometimes it does happen with certain players where they get paid and then they get comfortable because they know they're going to be out there every fifth day. And I'm not saying that Luis Castillo isn't trying. What I'm saying is Luis Castillo has not lived up to the expectations of when we traded for him. And I would, if you're asking me, what makes better baseball sense. It is moving Luis Castillo, not George Kirby, not Logan Gilbert, not guys who are considered top 5 Cy Young candidates. You give just like they did with Robbie Ray, who was making $24 million. I think next year Luis Castillo is going to be somewhere around that same price point. And even with arbitration, those Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, those guys are going to be pushing 15 mil at most. They didn't have great seasons this year, so they're not going to be able to command huge arbitration numbers. But it's going to probably be close to that, which is still 10 million cheaper than any ace that you're going to be able to find on the open market. So when I look around Major League Baseball and I look at where the talent is, teams like both New York teams, Philadelphia, Atlanta, LA, San Francisco even, would gladly take Luis Castillo off our hands. And I believe this is the offseason where the no trade clause going into 2025. I believe this is the year where the no trade clause gets dropped. But even so, if Mariner management went to Luis Castillo and said, "Hey, the Atlanta Braves would like to take you, and they're going to give us, name it, Alvis or whoever."
Jared Kelenic is a throw-in.
Well, you get what I'm saying. To get, I think his name was Ozzy Alvis. I can't remember. Anyway,
I'll look it up.
Yeah, their second base or whoever, right? Like whoever. But to be able to get 3 solid major leaguers back in return at a price point where actually, to be honest with you, it's his
Ozzy Alvis.
Yeah, Ozzy Alvis. To be able to get a pitcher like that, they would be more than willing to trade the Mariners solid guys back. You might even throw the Diamondbacks into that conversation as well too. The ability to get good major leaguers back that are going to help raise the bottom line. To be honest with you, you're not going to get that with George Kirby or Logan Gilbert. What you're going to get are top prospects in return for those type of guys. Or you might be able to swing a 1-for-1, but you're not going to get a big package back like you would expect you would with Luis Castillo. So I thought Bryce Miller took the next step this year. I thought Logan Gilbert, for good stretches, was this team's ace this year. I thought George Kirby, I wouldn't say Kirby took a step back this year, but I would say that he didn't take that necessary step forward. I think he kind of stayed the same, which is fine because he was still good for good portions. So I want to throw some flowers his way. But what this team needs, look around. When you look around the outfield, they're going to make a decision on Randy Arozarena. There's going to be a huge hole in right field because I have a feeling that they're going to. I think they're going to release Mitch Haniger, and maybe they'll eat it, and maybe they'll have to move some pieces around to offset the $15 million for next season. Maybe they do what they did last year, which is move a prospect or two with Mitch Haniger to unload the 15 mil. But there's so many holes on this roster, and we're not getting Matt Brash until May next year. He's not going to start the season. So you want to get Yusei Kikuchi in free agency, Josh? Come on, man. Man. I know he had a good second half with Houston, but that's what happens when you go to a playoff team. That momentum seems to rub off. But here's what I will say. Here's a name I'll throw out for you. I believe he's going to be a free agent this offseason, and we could have had him last year. He's a Shoreline product.
Blake Snell.
And you know where I'm going, right? He's a Shoreline product. He's a lefty, which this rotation badly needs a lefty in it. That's right, Blake Snell.
Blake Snell has to, and he was begging to go to the Mariners last season, but the Mariners didn't do it. But now, let's say if the Mariners do trade away Luis Castillo, then that could be the opportunity. At this point, we're pretty much going into the future of the Mariners, and they should definitely go for Blake Snell. But things to be concerned, and this is going to be the last 10 minutes of the show because I got to roll soon. But those arbitration years is kind of scary to me. And actually, let's just go over the holes, shall we, at this point?
Sure.
So I'm just going to go through each position. We have to say hole or is it locked? Or we're good to go. Catcher, which is owned by Cal Raleigh.
Well, for right now, it's locked.
Yeah, it's locked. First base is pretty much a platter between like Luke Raley, Justin Turner.
Yeah.
How they upgrade on that?
Yeah, first base. Well, here's the thing, right? It all depends on what the what the market bears, because I'm looking at it right now, and at first base, obviously Pete Alonso is available, but you're probably looking somewhere at the $20 million range to bring him in. But you have guys like Paul Goldschmidt, you have Anthony Rizzo, Josh Bell, Christian Walker, Carlos Santana, who's 38.
Yeah, he's old man. Ryan
O'Hearn, who you probably might be able to get on a cheaper deal, but that's the thing. It's like there's not a lot. So, if you're not willing to pay Pete Alonso, then, I'll say this, man, I would have no problem starting the season with Ty Locklear at first base. That's the thing, is if you would rather spend the money elsewhere, I would have no problem with Locklear getting run to start the season next year at first base.
So should we call that a push?
No, I would say that it's open.
So it's open. All right, so that one's open. Second base, I think we can agree that is more than wide open, like fat open, because, well, the thing is, like, I don't think the Mariners are expected to give a Jorge Polanco that option. Like, I think they're probably just gonna let him go.
I would say this, right? So yeah, if they decline the option, but they want to keep him at maybe at a $5 million a year, they've done that before, where the Mariners have declined the option but brought him back at a lower number on a 1-year deal. Would I have a problem with Polanco back on a 1-year deal? Yes and no. But outside of that, there's you're not going to give, if you're going to give Ty Locklear a run at first base, you're not going to do it with Ryan Bliss too. So yeah, I would say that it's open at this point.
Yep, second base definitely open. Now we got shortstop, which is owned by J.P. Crawford, unfortunately, because boy, did he take a huge regression from his 2023 Driveline season.
By the way, just to let you know, at second base, the notable names available are Gleyber Torres, who I would have no problem bringing in. Adam Frazier is going to be available. You can get on a 1-year deal. And Donovan Solano is going to be available as well, too.
There's also Ha-Sung Kim, who could also, who has a mutual option. What's basically a team option at that point. Maybe that's another name to look at. But yeah, shortstop. Ha-Sung Kim, he is with the Padres.
Oh, yep.
He's decent, but I mean, he won't be the world of a difference maker, but at least he has a good glove, I'll tell you that. And for shortstop, free agency looks pretty meh. It's like Willie Adams, Tim Anderson, Miguel Rojas, Ahmed Rosario.
I would have no problem with Willie Adames. The thing with Ha-Sung Kim is that he's got a mutual option for $7 million. Same thing with Kyle Farmer. He's got an option. Miguel Rojas has got a club option. But then after that, after Adames and all the options, you have Paul DeYoung, Garrett Hampson, Ahmed Rosario, Jose Iglesias, Kevin Newman. There's very, very, very slim pickings at shortstop free agent wise. So if that is a position that you want to upgrade over JP, then it's going to have to come via trade.
The other possibility is Cole Young, which, although great prospect, we still can't predict if he'll actually do any good. It's pretty, I wouldn't say it's even likely that he'll have like a Julio type rookie seasons, but I would say,
are you okay with the notion of starting a couple rookies next year?
I actually am. I'm open to it because knowing how the Mariners operate, but I still want them to get like some kind of free agency kind of moves or kind of trades. But for Cole Young, his name should be used on JP Crawford 24/7. Like if I am Dan Wilson, who's probably going to be the manager next year, as they say,
he will. I
would tell this to JP Crawford, hey, you struggled last season. And by the way, we have a shortstop. Yeah, make it do not just give it to JP Crawford freely. Like make him earn it. But then again, the fans would be like, nah, we want Cole Young. But he is one of the prospects I'm open to starting for next season. Along with Ty Locklear, I'm okay with that. But Ryan Bliss, he's streaky. I like his bat, but I hate his glove. His glove is awful. But he's got speed, but that's about it.
If I'm Dan Wilson, I'm giving, I'm making sure that JP has a picture of Cole Young on his bedside mirror. You know what I mean? On his dresser mirror. You look at that face all off season and understand this is the guy that's going to take your job next season if you don't bust your what in the off season. You know what I mean? So remember, anywhere JP goes to to do his off season routine, there's Cole Young standing there in the background, pushing him, making him better.
And JP Crawford does have a couple years left in his contract, so there is going to be that.
Yeah, I think he signed the 4-year extension that runs through 2026.
Yep, and in 27 he'll be free agent, and I'm pretty sure the Mariners will. I'm pretty sure we'll all be happy if he's gone by then, and plus he'll be like a couple years on aged. And third base obviously has a hole because Josh Rojas has unfortunately proven, like at the start of the season, I was okay with him saying, okay, let's see what he can do for this season, but we've seen enough. He's a platoon player at best. 100%. He's basically his role is no different than Dylan Moore. Like that's as much as I would take on Josh Rojas is basically have the Dylan Moore role. But third base, huge hole.
Huge hole. And this is another problem because the free agent third baseman at this point is very slim pickings, right? You would probably assume that Alex Bregman is going to have a lot of suitors, and you would have to assume that it's any contract talk is going to start at $20 million a season. And if that's a little too pricey for the Mariners, for a 30-year-old third baseman, then you have Yoan Moncada, who has got a club option at 25. That's probably going to be rejected. And Eugenio Suarez, who's got a club option at 15, which you would probably assume is going to be rejected as well too. So do you want to bring back a 33-year-old Eugenio Suarez? And if not, the last one is Gio Urshela. You know what I mean? So there's not, third base. Again, this is going to be something that's going to have to be upgraded by trade. Maybe
trade or free agency.
Maybe you get Matt Chapman from San Francisco or something. You know what I mean? Maybe you do bring back Suarez on a 1-year deal. Maybe. I
mean, it would be a pretty Mariner thing to do if they were somehow able to get Suarez on some kind of a deal. And I definitely do miss doing this on my shows.
All right, guys. Goodbyes only. Don't forget it.
Stop it. Thank you. I think that it wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea when you look at the second half Suarez had with Arizona this year.
Yeah.
He did have a pretty solid second half, and it made Jerry Dipoto look like a fool. But that being said, it's a gamble, and this is a team that can't gamble a lot. So,
and they gambled on Mitch freaking Haniger. It's almost like they should have just kept Robbie Ray and just ate that contract, but they thought that.
Tell you what, but it's open. That position is wide open.
I think it's the most wide open position on the team.
And understand that third base and first base are two of the biggest positions, not just from a defensive standpoint, but mostly from an offensive standpoint. The bulk of your power and your RBI production comes from those two positions, and that was something that the Mariners desperately needed going into the season. And Jerry Dipoto, Mr. Josh Rojas, and what's his
Luis Urias.
Yeah, Luis Urias. That was
it was a disaster.
That was a bad decision.
Now we'll go to center field. I think we can say center field's safe. I think Julio's fine. Not much to say, but my advice to you, Julio, at the next spring training press conference, do not talk a big game ever again. Do not do that. Just say, yeah, I was just working hard, just getting ready for next season, but just leave it at that. Don't say something like, oh, yeah, I'm going for the MVP. No, you're done.
Here's the thing. I like it, though. I like the attitude. I really do. I like the confidence. But that's the thing. It's like in this lineup, without proper protection, you're never going to be an MVP. I like the confidence and the arrogance. I really do. But he also has to take a look behind him real quick and see that he's got like heaps of trash piled up behind him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, left field is owned by Randy Arozarena. I would wonder if the Mariners are going to explore trading him because he looked completely lost. Yes, he's a talented guy, but the man was just lost.
I actually want to see Randy Arozarena in a full season in a Mariner uniform. I'm not gonna put this year squarely on his shoulders. There were times where he looked terrible, but then again, when he got traded here, it was the Scott Service effect on him that seemed to carry over a little bit. But there were stretches, even small stretches, where it looked like he could be productive. And again, this is a situation where you have to have protection around Randy Arozarena and Julio Rodriguez, right? And there's a reason why I keep saying Juan Soto, because having the focal point be there where you can't pitch around Julio or Randy is going to make a world of difference for those two.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, we'll keep it as safe. I'm going to say more of a push, honestly, because the free agent market looks really attractive too for the outfield.
Right. I think you're absolutely right. That could be because you have Teoscar Hernandez, who's going to be available, Michael Conforto, Alex Verdugo, who possibly could be had at a $10 to $12 million range. I wouldn't mind seeing Verdugo here. Tyler O'Neill is available. Tommy Pham, Jesse Winker, Jerickson Profar, Austin Slater are going to be. So there are options at a price point that's going to be a little bit cheaper. A guy like Verdugo, who's one of the things that I think you and I were screaming about was the fact that this team does not have enough contact. Guys who would just literally just put the ball in play, that aren't swinging for the fences, that are just trying to put bat to ball and put ball in play. Verdugo is one of those guys.
And I think we can agree that, because I'm running out of time, unfortunately, but I think right field could also be a push because, I mean, with the entire outfield, left field and right field is pretty much the same thing, right? We got Victor Robles and Luke Raley. So, and yes, they were very serviceable players, but with that market, they should at least look at it. Just look at the list and see what they can get for any of those guys. Will they get Juan Soto? Probably not. And honestly, I don't even think that John Stanton even knows who that is.
Jerry, listen to me, okay? There is a good possibility that by the All-Star break next year, you will not be in charge of this baseball team, okay? This is the biggest offseason that you're going into. And understand that the goodwill that fans have, they don't have it for you anymore after back-to-back failures, right? And you need to do something big this offseason to get that goodwill back. But moreover, you need it to keep your job. And I do not think you need to go full Jack Sorensic here. But if this was an offseason to extend a massive contract to somebody, it's Juan Soto. And if he's 25 years old, okay, next year he'll be 26 on a 10-year deal. You're going to get at least 7 years of productivity from him before things happen. Things will start dipping off after he reaches 32, but you're going to get at least 7 years out of him. This isn't your normal free agent. So contact his people and say, we'll give you a 10-year deal at $600 million. And we'll throw in a couple outs. If he doesn't like Seattle, he can leave after a couple years. Not a big deal. because that also protects us as well too. But back up the Brinks truck and get Juan Soto and pair him with Julio Rodriguez. Because after Juan Soto in the free agent market, it's Anthony Santander. It's guys who are decent, but they're not Juan Soto. That guy can hit anywhere. Do us a favor. And
yes.
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, because this isn't Robbie Cano, who is 30 years old, and you're giving him a 10-year deal. That's not this. He's 26. Do it. Make headlines. Win the offseason with this flashy headlines. And if that means you have to trade a few pieces to figure out the workaround for his $35, $40 million a season salary, whatever. Do what you got to do. But if you can sign Juan Soto, all will be forgiven.
Yep. Let's make that happen. Let's hope it does happen. But I hate to say it all.
Right field is wide open right now.
Yep. But I hate to say it. The shows must end. I only did it because you Mariner fools made me do it, because the demand was there to vent about the Mariners. Didn't really have much time out of it, but we have a whole off season to talk about the Mariners. So Steve and I will be talking about it throughout. And there is little questions on whether I'll be doing the last few games of the Mariners season. Not sure yet, but we'll let you know. But that's going to do it. Just want to say thank you very much for being on this show. And painfully saying, go Mariners.
54% over anything. 54% of the time, all the time.
Doing us a favor. Have a good night, everyone.